The ghosts of my life. Yes, I wasn't really a massive fan of Japan and or Talk actually. I was a fan of Kate Bush, but those two bands, Talk and Japan. I mean, I know life's what you make it from Talk, great, and I now have been driven to not actually looking at the Japan albums yet, although they are ready for me to look at. I feel like I need to take more time to look at those, but certainly the Talk albums, which I'd never listened to before, never bothered before, have been something I'm particularly interested in. The earlier albums, if I'm honest, the later albums where they became proggier and post-pop, really, are not as interesting to me. The poppier stuff of life's what you make it. But the reason why I've been pushed to those pushed to those albums and those bands is because I've just read a superb book. It is superb. It's a Sonic Bond book. Now, Sonic Bond are generally, as you'll know, I get a lot of those books to review for Fireworks. I edit the books page, and generally you'll get those on track, every album, every song series. Quite a lot of that. You'll get something around sometimes the 70s, certain point in the 70s, or you might get something around a particular album, so something that's more focused in that way. I don't mean focused. I don't mean that, but of course I think they've covered them actually in one of the books. Anyway, this is something a bit different because they've branched out. And this book by Matthew Restall, and it's rather well done, Ghosts, Journeys to Post-Pop, is about a subject. It's about a genius. More of that in a minute. But it is about the specific bands that link with other bands like OMD and other bands like that, and Duran Duran, who were around and were in competition with Japan at the time, how that kind of developed in the business, but also it's about how those songs are not really pop, but they are pop, and they really deliver something a bit different. He's quite right, you know. And the thing about this book is that it walks a fine line. And that fine line is between academic tome and fan book. Now that is a sweet spot, isn't it? Because the basis of this book is not, well, then they released this and they were very popular in. You will get quite a lot of that. And you will get quite a lot of, well, they didn't get on together. You know, for instance, some people who worked with Mark Hollis in Talk didn't get on with the ways that those albums were produced. Some of the people in Japan didn't get on with David Sylvian didn't get on with him, you know. Mick Karn, for instance, and Mr. Barbieri and all of that didn't get on together. And there will be that in there, but there will also be this nature of what's a pop song. A discourse around what's a pop song. A discourse around whether Japan takes you further than a pop song, whether the scenius, which can mean all sorts of things, but on this occasion, it's used to push against, really. The scenius is around the bands and the situation and all of that, and how these artists, actually mainly Japan and Talk, the stuff around Kate Bush is lighter and not as fleshed out, but certainly the stuff around Japan and Talk, very different very different offers, pushing against that scenius of this is what we might expect. Like a semiology type of thing, really. The semiotics of pop are, in the 80s, are quite limited. certainly in the time when Japan, in the sort of late 70s, early 80s, to the mid 80s, I suppose, well, early 80s really, and much later, Talk, when they were working, the semiotic handshake of what to expect from pop was very limited. And that's a good thing, you may say, because it allows you to understand exactly what pop is. So if you hear something, you think, I know what that is now. I know that's pop. I know what to expect. Consequently, it's a shortcut to me enjoying it. So Asenius is similar to that, in my view. I could be wrong, and maybe Mr. Restall would like to have a chat with me about that. I'd quite like to, actually, because he knows his stuff. And he's also prepared to to start discussion, and also to posit theories which a lot of people would say pop shouldn't do. Pop's just disposable, you shouldn't do that. Well, it's not. It doesn't exist in a vacuum either. And this book is beautiful in, where it wins, and the beauty of it is in describing those songs. The language is quite high flown, but keeps you grounded to push along with those discussions around ideas. But it also gives you a context, and then it also gives you, and you might want to know this about the band, things you didn't know. Now, I didn't know much about Japan, and I didn't know much about Talk, and that's what pulled me into the book. Maybe it's me that's thought that, well, the Kate Bush thing is, the stuff around Kate Bush is lighter, because I happen to know a bit more about her than I do about the other two bands. But it's fascinating to see where they came from, to see how they linked into pop, and therefore how they were able to absolutely turn against it. And how you can use phrases like post-pop, but what do they really mean? That discourse is great, but if it wasn't for the wonderful combination of these are bands you might like, and this is what they did, and you can read this book on that level if you like, and that's great. But with that and I'm going to tell you my theories on pop and the pop they made and the pop they would like to make and where we are with all of that. And it's never overburdened. It doesn't overburden, this book. It's beautifully plotted. It is probably the best Sonic Bond release I have seen so far or read so far. It's thoroughly entertaining. And if you like pop, and if you like post-pop, and in particular, if you wonder where Talk were going with their music, and where Japan were going with their music, and whether they're coming back, and all of... Yeah, you'll also get the answer to those questions. And I know Mr. Hollis is now sadly deceased, so that will give you a finality to that. But, whether Japan might come back, and whether their music might be re-released, and all of that. It will give you that business stuff as well. It is beautifully done. From beginning to end, you'll get everything you need. And if you like pop, and if, like me, you were around at this time, particularly for the Japan stuff, you're going to have a great time with this, because it is beautifully written. Ta-ta.